human beings, PowerGamer here. We all know chickens are the most dangerous bird on the planet, hence my ongoing war with them, but lately I've been wondering what's number 2. So, after months of research, I think I finally found the answer to what is the second most dangerous bird to ever exist.
Eagles?
Okay, third most.
Hawks?
Fourth most.
Ravens?
Fifth most.
Owls?
Sixth most.
Turkeys?
Geese! I'm talking about geese! They are vicious little creatures that exist solely to torment people, and nowhere is that better demonstrated than in their 2019 interactive documentary.
Untitled Goose Game. It's been 5 years and we still don't have an actual name. This game surprised a lot of people when it was announced, and after it released, it took the world by storm for about a month or two. After that, people just kind of forgot about it, which is weird since it was all over the internet for a while. The game was developed by House, an indie development studio from Australia consisting of 4 members: Stuart Giuseppe Cook, Nico Disseldorp, Michael McMaster, and Jacob Strasser, with the music being composed by Dan Golding. It originated from a stock image of a goose that someone posted in their internal communications, and when they saw this, they decided to make an entire game featuring this flying menace. They wanted the game to have a mission-based structure similar to the Hitman series, but with a more comedic take on it, though personally, if you gave me the option of dealing with these 2 monsters, I will gladly take the Hitman, at least he seems more reasonable. And they decided to make the game take place in an English village so that the more proper setting would clash with the terror of a goose, which would add to the comedy. And when designing it, they took inspiration from British kids shows like Postman Pat and Fireman Sam. It was first shown off at Fantastic Fest arcade showing in Texas, and since they didn't have a title yet, it was referred to as simply Untitled Goose Game. And people seemed to latch onto it, so it stuck. The only other thing they even slightly considered was Some Like It Honk, which I don't even want to think about that. The game was released on September 20th, 2019 for PC, Mac, and the Switch, with PS4 and Xbox One versions coming in December. And it managed to sell over 1 million copies by the end of the year, which is really impressive for an indie game. Reception was quite positive among critics, and general players just ate it up. So many people were talking about this game, and it spread like wildfire across the internet. There were so many memes based on this game, it was ridiculous. Even people who didn't play it were seeing tons of stuff about this. But then everyone just kind of moved on. In the almost 5 years since its release, barely anyone has talked about it.
I played this game shortly after it came out, and I had quite a bit of fun with it, but I haven't touched it since then, so I'm curious to see if it still has value on a second playthrough or if it's just a one-trick bird. You might as well call this Goose Theft Auto, because we are about to ruin some people's lives solely for the hell of it.
When the game boots up, a goose pops out of a bush. And that's all you need to know. Yeah, this game's story is pretty much non-existent. You're a goose who goes around messing with the people of a small village, and that's it. I mean, I'm sure you could read deeper into that, but I don't think any of us are here for the goose lore, which is a shame because this essay I wrote is some great stuff, but that's a subject for another time. This is very much a game defined by the gameplay and the visuals, and said visuals are very pleasant. The game goes for a cel-shaded approach for the graphics, and it looks quite nice. It might be simple, but it has some decent aesthetic, and you can easily tell what all of the people are thinking despite having no faces. And the goose itself, I mean, that right there is the face of a killer. The music is really interesting. It's really orchestral and reacts directly to what you're doing. If you're just walking around, it doesn't play at all. When you're interacting with things, it chimes in a bit, and if you're being chased, it gets more intense. And now if you'll let me hit the rewind button for a sec, you're a goose who goes around messing with the people of a small village, and that's it. Yeah, that sums up the gameplay. Upon exiting this little forest area and entering a pond, you're given a checklist of things to do. The game is divided into multiple areas, each one filled with different objects and humans to interact with. Once you complete the checklist, you can move on to the next area where the cycle repeats. The missions can range from stealing things to hurting people to just messing around with stuff. This game is pretty much a fusion between a puzzle game and a stealth game. The goose has 5 different abilities. You can run to move faster, honk to get people's attention, grab things with your beak, lower your head to get past things, and flap your wings to show off. This is purely for show. There's only one time in the game where you actually need to do this. The game's puzzles come from how you utilize these things. Most of them involve interacting with objects, but there are some where you need to honk at people. And some of them require you to grab things without being spotted, so you gotta use your surroundings to your advantage.
Untitled Goose Game is one of the most straightforward video games you will ever see in your life, but it's very clear that its charm comes from the humor rather than the gameplay itself.
This game is just one long cartoon. It's a perfect example of the term schadenfreude because everything you do winds up causing trouble for the people of the village. Hell, the game presents you with plenty of opportunities to be a jerk for literally no reason other than it's funny. The very first thing you see upon exiting the opening area is someone's lunch sitting on a bench, and the game is just begging for you to drop it in the lake. There's no reward for doing it, it's not on the checklist, you don't even know who it belongs to, but it's amusing to think about how you can get the sandwich wet purely because it makes you laugh. The goose has no limits when it comes to harassing these poor English folk. You'll be luring them into a lake, making them trip, stealing their things and putting them in the market so if they want it back they have to pay for it, breaking things, the old chair gag, scaring them, dropping a freaking bucket on their head, the list goes on. Some men just want to watch the world burn, and some birds just want to watch the world cry. Excluding the opening path, this game is divided into 4 areas: a garden by the lake, a downtown shopping area, 2 people's backyards, and a pub. The list of tasks you need to complete is different with each area, but the one thing they all have is a mission where you need to collect a handful of objects and bring them to one place. And this is where the stealth part of the game kicks in, since if a person spots you stealing something, they'll immediately try to get it back. And if you're not careful, they'll take away the things you've already collected, and you need to steal them again. So you want to avoid being seen, place other objects in the way so they'll be distracted by those, or in some cases just make a beeline so they can't catch you.
The puzzles do have a decent variety in terms of ways to solve them, but sadly, there isn't really much here content-wise.
Unless you get held up on one or two puzzles in particular, it shouldn't take you more than 20 minutes to finish one area, so going through this game should only take about 2 to 3 hours. The puzzles are pretty straightforward, and the main challenge comes from either getting the timing right or dealing with how annoying the character AI can be. Yeah, if there's one complaint I have with this game besides the lack of content, it's the fact that the people have to do specific things in order for you to complete certain tasks, and if they don't cooperate, it can take way longer than it should. And now let's actually discuss the areas. There really isn't that much to say about most of them. The garden, you have to get inside, steal the groundskeeper's keys, get him wet, either with the lake or the sprinkler, swipe his hat, drag a rake in a lake, and bring stuff to this picnic blanket. Once you complete all the missions except one, so you don't actually have to do everything, but that's less fun, you unlock one final task that becomes available due to the person putting up a no geese sign. This then causes something to happen that allows you to enter the next area. Here you need to mess up the sign, and then honk so the gardener hits his thumb and then falls back to open this door. This lets you access the town, where you chase this boy into a phone booth so he calls for help, allowing you to enter this TV shop, untie the boy's shoes so he loses his glasses and then give him the wrong ones, steal his toy plane and bring it into the market so he has to buy it back, break this broom the shopkeeper uses to shoo you away, and drop things in this basket. Then you need to trap the shopkeeper in this garage so she opens up the gate. Pick through this fence to enter the backyards, where you steal this guy's slippers, bring his stuff to the other fence so the woman puts them on the bust, disguise yourself as a statue so she puts a ribbon on you, ring this bell to make the man spit out his tea, make the guy throw the vase over the fence, and put these clothes in the koi pond. Then make the woman clip this rose so she makes a sign allowing you to slip through this house. In order to enter the pub, you have to hide in this box, or as I like to call it, Metal Goose Solid. Once inside, you make this man screw up his darts, do tricks for these easily impressed ladies, swipe a toy boat that was in the sink. Is that a common thing? Grab this man's stool before he sits down, and the timing is very different from the other puzzles. Drop a pint glass in the canal without breaking it. That doesn't count. And bringing dishes to this table. Then lure this guy into the back so you can drop a bucket on his head, causing him to fall on a crate of tomatoes. He then opens a dumpster, allowing you to reach the final area of the game, this model village that has you break a castle and steal the bell. After that, it becomes a race back home, as the village folk are very protective of this thing. Can't say I blame them. Bells are one of the most cherished things on the planet. You need to sneak by all of them without them taking the bell, and running causes it to ring, so you gotta be careful. Even then, the section is pretty easy, since it's not hard to get the bell back if you lose it. Once you make it back to the starting area, you drop the bell in this ditch, so clearly this wasn't your first rodeo, and the credits roll.
That may seem like the end, but we do unlock some extra stuff after beating the game.
Some extra missions are revealed after collecting the bell, but what's cool is you can actually solve them before you finish the game. And some of them are things you might naturally try, like locking the groundskeeper out of the garden, making the boy fall in the puddle, or dropping the toy boat in the river so it sails into the bridge. These puzzles are much more complicated than the main ones, and typically require you to think outside the box. Plus, a lot of them require you to move things between areas. Yeah, one thing I didn't mention was that the entire game is connected, so you're free to bring things wherever you want as long as you have access to those areas. But once you complete those, you have to essentially replay the main game. The final tasks are a series of time trials where you have to complete all of the main puzzles in each of the 4 areas before the church bell rings, which happens exactly 7 minutes after you boot up the game. And these are easily the most frustrating ones, since you're completely reliant on the behavior of the humans, so if they don't cooperate, you can end up having to do these over and over again. But once you complete everything on the list, you're rewarded with a crown, which you can drag outside so someone will put it on your head. Now you can assert your dominance as the Goose King, Lord of Terror. All will tremble before the mighty goose.
Game conquer. Untitled Goose Game is a decent enough time, but there isn't really that much to keep you coming back to it. You can complete the whole game 100% in less than 5 hours, and by that point you've seen everything it has to offer. But the humor is enough to make it worth playing at least once, since if you're a fan of some fun slapstick, this game is hilarious. It only costs $20, which is a bit more than most indie games, but I think it's worth it, and if you don't, just wait for it to go on sale. Either way, I'm glad I finally got to play this game again, and maybe I was a bit harsh on geese earlier. They're actually pretty charming creatures. I might never touch this game again, but I know I am never gonna forget that face.
Look out in the woods. They said you should stay away. He's up to no good, ruining everyone's day. Here comes the goose. Here comes the goose. Now he's on my lawn. Drop my lunch in a pond. Stealing glasses. Wasting beer. Spraying the hose. killing someone's rose, breaking vases, hurting people's faces, scaring the boy, swiping his toy. I hit my thumb hard, get out of my yard. He's taking all our things before the church bell rings. Watch out for your seat, they said you should stay away. Here comes the goose, ruining everyone's day. Here comes the goose, ruining everyone's day. Here comes the goose, ruining everyone's day. Here comes the goose, here comes the goose, ruining everyone's day. Here comes the goose, here comes the goose, ruining everyone's day. Here comes the goose, here comes the goose, ruining everyone's day. Here comes the goose, here comes the goose, ruining everyone's day. Here comes the goose, here comes the goose, ruining everyone's day. Ruining everyone's day. Ruining everyone's day. Ruining everyone's day. Ruining everyone's day.
On second thought, geese are a threat to every living creature on the planet. We gotta get rid of them.